On a cold, tragic day for both Minnesota and the United States, 38 Dakota men were hung in the largest mass hanging in history on December 26, 1862 in Mankato, Minnesota. 303 men were condemned to die after the Santee Sioux Uprising in the War of 1862, condemned after fighting for their families' livelihoods after treaties made with the U.S. government were broken, leaving our tribe with no money or food in exchange for more than 24 million acres of their land. President Lincoln was concerned how this would play with the Europeans whom he was afraid were about to enter the war on the side of the South. He compromised with Minnesota politicians and pardoned the list of 303 to be hung down to 38. Among those men pardoned was my great-great-great-grandfather, Maza Adidi. In recent years, we have been able to dig deeper into this sad part of our history and found if it wasn't for the strength and our perseverance of our great-grandmothers, our families wouldn't be here today. The Dakota Commemorative March remembers and honors the 1,700 Dakota women, children, and elders who were forcibly marched 150 miles by U.S. military troops from the site of present-day Morton, Minnesota, to the concentration camps at Fort Snelling. Among the 1,700 was my great-great-great-grandmother, Pecha, who walked this march with her elderly mother and 4 babies, ranging from 4 years old to 6 weeks old. In 2002 was the first year of the Dakota Women and Children Commemorative March, also known as the Grandma March. I had walked this march with my own grandma through the years as a child. This past year was the first year I marched with pride as a grown Dakota woman, along with a few other strong women in my family, many of whom flew multiple states for this event. Not only do we march to remember, this march is mainly about healing, spiritual healing that comes from connecting with our ancestors. My cousins took part in this march to begin healing from a tragic murder of their brother the month prior. We came together and walked as a family, each person with their own hurt and their own journey. I personally joined alongside my Auntie Donna on day 5, who on day 4 had slipped and fallen on the ice. She pushed through the pain and finished the day's walk before then going to the ER that night and learning she had broken her arm. And yet she walked with me the next day, a horrifying realization of how common this must have been for our grandmas as they walked this road 150 years ago. Each day as we walked, everyone carried a prayer stake with the head of the household's name who had been imprisoned in Fort Snelling. Every mile marker along our journey, we would stop and call their names. As we call their names, they come and are with us. We place our prayer stakes, sing a song, offer tobacco and a prayer to our ancestors, thanking them for their strength. Throughout the day, we were proven several times that our ancestors were listening to our prayers in our footsteps. The Wambadi eagles watched over our procession. Horses would come to the fence and follow us as long as they could. It was as if they knew what we were doing and why we were doing it. The energy while walking alongside them was palpable. It brought both a smile to my face and tears to my eyes. While walking, we were told stories from our elders that went on as our grandmothers and their babies walked through the towns. The towns were told that no man shall disrupt any Native woman, leaving the women of the town to do as they pleased. One story told of a woman who snatched a baby out of her mother's arms by the foot and slammed the baby onto the ground and set it back in its mother's arms, who was not allowed to stop or fight without risking death. She continued to march while her baby died in her arms. We ended day 6 strong with a prayer song. As soon as we were done for the day, I was flooded with pain in my feet and legs, a pain I hadn't had or at least seemed to notice all day, which again made me reflect on how these ladies did it so long ago. We had the luxury of multiple layers, wool socks, and comfy shoes. To have had to walk with practically nothing in the cold Minnesota winter gives me chills just thinking about it. I was hardly able to walk the rest of the evening, and getting ready the next morning was excruciating. But I was there for a purpose, and I was not going to give up. We drove to the starting point where the march began for the final day. As I started walking, the pain was gone. I mentioned this to the elders walking, and she said that was the Spirit filling me with strength and healing me for this journey, and I couldn't help but cry. I took advantage of getting to know my Auntie Donna as we led this march side by side, a strong force to be reckoned with. An aunt I'd known my whole life, but never really gotten to know woman to woman. We walked and talked about how strong my grandma is, her mom, and the sacrifices she had to make to give her children the best life she could. Throughout this conversation, I realized that the strength of all the women in our family. We don't give up when times are tough, and we persevere. A quality passed down generation to generation, no doubt, from our great-grandmother Pecha. Though such a sad story we are commemorating, this is also a joyous event. This was an opportunity for us to gather together as a tribe, to draw on each other's strengths and help through their weaknesses. We gathered on the south side of the Mendota Bridge, preparing ourselves spiritually and emotionally for the last leg of our journey. There was a powerful silence as we crossed this bridge into the lower part of Fort Snelling. As we marched by the barracks that overlooked the lower historical imprisonment area, we were reminded that the artillery was pointed down at their teepees so they could not escape. I was completely overwhelmed and tears streamed down my face as I tried to stay strong. Nothing but the sounds of our footsteps nearing our destination. At the final ceremony on our sacred land, elders spoke that this unity should not end today. It is a responsibility to educate and remember the stories of our history before it is completely forgotten. This is our ceremony. It is not a protest, and it is not a reenactment. This is a spiritual ceremony for healing and honoring those women and children we descend from. We remember their strength and determination. When you hear the words Holocaust and genocide, you think of 6 million Jews who were killed in World War II. Yet 18 million Native Americans were killed in our own country, and no one is aware of it. It is only when we as a nation start to recognize and educate this tragic part of our history that we as a race and a nation can begin to heal.